Man, 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 do 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 do, man, 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 man. Yeah. Honestly, when I heard this title of that movie, Man, that's the first thing that popped out of my mind. Just singing the 3.5 Men song. Whether you love or hated that show, I can't deny that this song was so catchy. I mean, when I was kind of growing up with that show, I just only saw it. I saw a couple of episodes, and honestly, when Charlie Sheen was on the show, it had some hilarious moments. I gotta admit that was kind of like a little bit of a guilty pleasure out of me. But then when the things happen, which I'm not gonna get into it, this is when I lost interest to the show. Just to let you know that I know all the things that was on the background on that show and all these things. But I had some kind of guilty pleasure out of it, and admittedly, Charlie Sheen was kind of like the highlight of that show, at least personally. And by the way, what do I feel? I am supposed to be talking about Alex Garland's movie, not about 2.5 Men. That's just a small thing out of it, but okay, let's start over. Men. Alex Garland's Man. I was supposed to be... I know that it's a little bit late to considering when this movie came out a few days ago. I had some other personal stuff to do, but also I was a little bit kind of like a personal crossroads that I'm not gonna get into it. And additionally, I just wanted to take that time in order to kind of advance some kind of artwork practice that I'm doing, which I'm not gonna go into details. But let's say that these crossroads is what kind of made me be a little bit late on talking about that movie, which I was very curious to go. Also, I am actually kind of like battling myself because I feel curious to watch that Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie, but honestly, when I get the courage, I might watch it. But the problem with this, apart from certain factors that I'm not gonna mention, my first impression is that I found this movie very cynical, according to the trailers. But this is kind of like first impressions. When I watch it, I do promise that I might gonna do a vlog out of it, and I might gonna get the chance because at the head start, I know that this week the movies that are coming up are Bob's Burgers or the movie or Top Gun Maverick. But unfortunately, I'm gonna say this, is that Bob's Burgers, I'm as much as I feel like I want to watch it because it's animated and all these things, unfortunately, I am one of those few people who don't like Bob's Burgers much. I know that it has a cult, that it now has its fans and all these things, but I gave it a try once, and honestly, I am not very keen of their art style, and I found the show. I didn't find the show kind of like funny, I'll say. I found it. I didn't think that it was kind of not for me. Not with ill intentions. I'm glad that it has its fan base, but I don't think that Bob's Burgers was call me enough attention to even go watch the how can I say the upcoming movie. As for Top Gun Maverick, The reason I don't feel like watching it is because I want to admit that I never even saw the first one. I haven't seen the original Top Gun, and so this is gonna lose me a lot. So if I go and watch it, and it wouldn't be, and personally, it wouldn't be too proper to make a vlog out of a movie that I basically didn't give it too much attention. But maybe I could watch it if I get the chance to watch the original. That's the only thing I'll give it a little bit as a head start out of it. But in the meantime, let's talk about Alice Garland's Men. What can I say about Alex Garland? As a director, I would say that he has kind of like artsy, and the one that I saw is kind of like one of those artsy fartsy movies that I have kind of like this love-hate relationship with, but also with a high respect with it, because art films can go either being good or being kind of like bad, I'll say. With Alex Garland, how can I say? First, Ex Machina was a good movie, I'll say it. Although I don't like that people kind of begins to overpraise it over and over and over again, because it has flaws, but many people kind of say that, wow, this is a great. It is good, but not great. And mostly it's because of the pacing. The pacing, I remember Ex Machina that has this really slow pace that maybe kind of like 20 minutes could have been cut down for, I will say. But I will give it credit that it gives out kind of like an interesting theme. The whole theme is, and the themes, the metaphors, and all these things is understandably what it was going on, and it also leads to a very shocking, and also really, really bitter ending. I'll say, at least in my opinion, which I was surprised. That part kind of really, really surprised me. Then came Annihilation. Annihilation, I wasn't very keen. It was nicely done, but the story had problems as far as I can remember. So much that I even forgot that even existed. And now I'm kind of remembering. I remember that I kind of compare it to the Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey, but a little bit more badly written. And I remember that, as far as I can remember, there was kind of like this bear creature that had a scene, and you know what, I'm totally drawing blanks, but I kind of remember that this was a movie that people are gonna either love it or hate it. I'm kind of like in the middle ground, I'll say. And now came Men. By the way, I'm talking about some of the ones that pops out of my head of Alex Garland's portfolio. But so I know that he did other stuff, but let's say that these are the kind of like the most prominent for now that comes to my head. So, Men. The first time I saw the trailer and considering the subject matter about the title, it kind of got me a little bit worried out of perspective of my gender, I'll say, because I was kind of feeling that it's gonna say that, okay, it's gonna be about this woman who's gonna be, sexually assaulted by a man, and she's gonna see that men are evil, and the movie is not gonna shut the freak up about saying the evils of men and all these things. And honestly, this is something that has been going on for a long time, at least for now. I don't want to get political, but you kind of begin noticing now in these movies, and sometimes it kind of does its work, and sometimes it goes, well, totally offensive. And the one that pops out of my mind that did that and backfired horribly is Black Christmas. Black Christmas did that thing horribly, and honestly, I know that what they're trying to do, but So when I get these kind of preachy things about saying that all men are horrible, it's gonna feel kind of uncomfortable if I have to defend my own gender. Although that doesn't mean that I cannot defend if it goes on the opposite direction. There's a certain balance out of it. So that thing got me worried, I'll say. But then I began to hear a little bit of the reviews saying that, well, it kind of does, but it's not exactly how you think of it. And I was kind of seeing that they're having some mixed but positive reviews out of it. So that got me curious. So I finally went there. I decided to watch it, and it's a good thing that it was a Tuesday because that's when the movie theaters become cheaper. I don't know what's going on up there. I hear a helicopter, so bear with me. But here's the thing. I finally watched the movie, and my overall opinion out of it is that, well, I cannot say if it was a good movie or a bad movie. Okay, bad choice of words. I'm even getting distracted by the damn helicopter. But you know, it's funny that a lot of times I complain that every time I'm recording, always an ambulance passes by. First time in my life that I hear a helicopter. Okay, but man, it was good. I'll say that it's good, but there are some things that I will criticize it out of it, because it itself is what you expect from these kind of movie. It is artsy. For one, it's artsy. It does have this kind of approach by saying that all men are horrible and all men are evil, but luckily it made it a little bit subtle enough and not too much in your face that it became more, instead of making a social commentary out of it, it became a little bit of a character study, I'll say, which is kind of better instead of playing like how can I say this kind of revolutionary guy and saying that all you people stink or something like that. But no, this one, depending on how you see it, you kind of get that it's not exactly saying that society sucks because of men, but it's mostly saying that this character could see these people like that because of this something happened with that character. It kind of play out a little bit like that, but if you feel a little bit more sensitive to that, I'm not gonna judge for that. I'm not here to judge you because of that. I'm just here to give out my own overall opinion and interpretation of the movie, I'll say. And this movie has a lot of pros in order to slam it as a bad movie. But unfortunately, I am ashamed to say that while it has some of the good aspects that I could notice from that he adopted from Ex Machina, it also adopted some of the bad aspects of Annihilation, in which it starts out well, but unfortunately, it falls apart almost at the end. At the end, it falls apart in the narrative to the point that you're just left out confused, and it may be something that some of these people who can read metaphors better than me can get it, but I'm mostly kind of like in the middle of it, but I'll get to that when I get to. There's gonna be kind of like slight spoilers in this one, because this is something that there are some points that I do need to address, but of course I'll give it my best to not spoil too much. But here it goes. So the story centers around this woman named Harper. She's played by Jessie Buckley. She had kind of like this event that happened related to her husband, and she goes to this house in London in which the caretaker, played by Rory Kinnears, a guy named Jeffrey. He say that here you can stay here vacationing, so you can you can get away from everything, keep your thoughts out. And she's there secluded, doing fine, doing her computer at work, talking to her sister via social media and all these things. But things get a little bit, how can I say, frisky when one time when she just walks around in the woods, kind of very beautiful woods, I'll say. She encounters this guy who begins to stalk her. Noticeably, she begins to get stalked by this kind of like this naked guy, with some bloods and scratches on all over his body, and she because of that, she kind of begins to relive the events that led her to this home, which involved a big dispute with her husband, which kind of led up with his death. I'll leave it like that at the moment, by the way. And because of that, and some of the experience I had with her husband, she begins to kind of see or hallucinate, how you interpret it. She begins to see as that every other man is having, let's say that it has some ulterior motives, or they're hiding something. And funnily enough, everyone has the Rory Kinnears face and all these things, but I'll get to that. That's the best basic thing I could say about this story, which is mostly centered around this character. The character's name Harper, and like I said, Jessie Buckley plays it. And if there is something worth the admission price, it's her acting. Jessie Buckley, she was excellent in this movie. Her acting is really believable. You believe in this character, and even though this can be a little bit, artsy, it shows a lot of strength on her emotions, the way she embodies this character, and you don't feel that she's phoning in. Mostly you'll see a little bit of the character, but still, she did a great job, I'll say. And the character itself is, I'm not gonna say that it's badly written, but let's say that it's kind of interesting in one way or another, until it kind of slips up a little bit at the end. But let's say that this is a character who came out with a trauma, I'll say. She came out with a trauma that it involved her husband. Her husband is played by, I'll read it, IMDb, is that his real name? Papa Esidio. Is that his real name? Okay, whatever. Basically, they weren't technically a good loving couple. He was very domineering, to the point that he was intimidating. He intimidated her with some bit of domestic violence, and let me tell you guys, is that his death, it was unintentionally hilarious, at least for me. It was, it's mostly how the movie presented it, and I don't know, there was something that it came out in the beginning, and I just kind of snicker around, I'll say. But I'll get to that maybe. But I'll say that this is a character who, the interesting thing is that you get enough clues to see what had happened with her, what she's doing in this one, but during the course of the movie, she basically kind of is this woman who she kind of begins to this experience kind of lost her. She begins to see everyone as the enemy, especially men, and mostly seeing it as this other character, which I'll get to it. Although I wonder why if this could have been the case. This is kind of like a nitpick, but you know what? I'll leave it like that. But let's say that this is a character who come up with that, and the movie kind of becomes a little bit ambiguous to see if this character is someone to feel sorry for or being pitiful, or it's just a character who she basically believes that she's the victim or something like that. Another highlight of this movie, who is also kind of like a great actor, is, like I said, Rory Kinnears, who plays the kind of like the caretaker of that castle named Jeffrey. The curious thing about this character is that he shows up, and then all the residents of the small village, including the place, it's all played by him, the same actor, and it kind of comes off kind of like weird, I'll say. It's almost like I don't know if that happened, but imagine if you go to vacations and you go to a village full of Peter Griffins. He's not Peter Griffin, but I'll give you kind of like the idea, because funnily enough, this is how the movie doesn't tell you exactly why. It gives you some kind of clue that probably this is kind of like supernatural, or probably something that is in her head. But a lot of these residents, they show up and they have his exact same face, the exact actor. Even a kid is there that he's just there to call her a stupid bitch. It is played by himself. The only thing that has different is that apparently they made a kid play him, and they digitally superimpose his head. And if you have a good eye, you'll notice the superimposement of his head and the kid. He also plays out kind of like this priest who has also some ulterior motives, then also the resident cop, and of course he also he also played. Let me see something. He also plays the alleged stalker, the stalker that he just stopped following her. And by the way, I gotta warn you that during the whole movie, that stalker is naked. Bare ass naked with sausage and everything. And he kind of plays out, like this guy who is following her. There's some creepy moments, like, man. And then how can I explain it? It's kind of hard to talk about this movie a lot with much. There are some other secondary characters, like for example, there's what was the name? Gail Rankin who plays our protagonist's sister, who most of the time she is only on face cam until the very end of the movie, I'll say. And she plays mostly like a secondary character who is kind of like the only support of our character, even though our main character technically doesn't wholly explain about what happened. I'll say every single actor, even the secondary ones, they did a great job. A great job. Again, especially Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnears, both on their performances, as well as Rory Kinnears' insistent, ways to, play multiple parts of a character. Well, many characters. Now I go with the cinematography, because this is something very typical on Alex Garland and some of those artsy H24 movies. I think it was H24. But honestly, the visuals are amazing, I'll say. They are beautiful. Sometimes the benefit of being an artsy movie is that you get the chance to become to become creative on the visuals, and you kind of play out with that, with the nature, the photography, and it looks really stunning. Especially, I really love the scenery of the how can I say during the beginning where our main character explores the woods, and she does it. And these are magnificent. It really makes me want to go visit London or wherever it took place and just go there or immerse myself into the woods or something like that. On the other hand, there's also, of course, the creepy imagery, because the movie is, of course, technically a horror movie, and a little bit in the how can I explain it? The best way, the closest thing I can explain what this movie tries to play out is, it's like Mother, but let's say that it's like Mother, but a little bit less metaphorical, at least until the final minutes, which I'll get there. But in the horror elements, it plays out well. I'm really glad that they don't use, the typical jump scares and all these things, or the orchestra string, because these are kind of like cheap techniques. This one, it relies more on both atmospheric horror, but at least also some body horror. The body horror, I gotta warn you, I'll say, is that I might spoil it, but it's kind of like I give you a warning out of it. But there is kind of like really moments in the movie in which, if you can't handle kind of like kind of like a whole hand and part of the arm being sliced by a knife, and additionally, almost during the climax of the movie, if you can't stand seeing a kind of like, how can I say, a birthing Dharma doll, no, how can I say, one of those Russian dolls, Matryoshka dolls, kind of like a Matryoshka doll version of between 4 or 5 men giving birth in continuous succession. If you can't handle this, I already gave you my warning, and I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding that there is a moment in which a guy gives birth to another guy, and then it does it again, and it does it again, and it does it again, and yes, it's as graphic as you may think. As artsy and graphic and bloody. So I'm gonna give you this to make you think, and probably might put you into, should I watch this movie? Because that's kind of like the biggest highlight that body horror that you're gonna get with this movie. And this is coming from a movie that at first you got mesmerized by the beautiful greenery. I didn't mention that the movie also has some nice soundtrack. Oh my God! What can I say about this one? I did also say that it has some great lightings and all this. All right. I think it is a good time for me to talk about a little bit of the themes in which, maybe I went a little bit harsh on saying that, well, this is a movie that's gonna show you that men are evil, blah, 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 you should hate men and all these things. No, you're confusing it with that horrible Black Christmas reboot movie that they did years ago. It doesn't go kind of like on the nose, I'll say. Oh, and by the way, when I'm talking about this, I'm gonna mix it with some of the cons that I have in this movie, because I don't want to overhype it. Because the themes are saying that kind of shows that probably men are horrible people and all these things. It if you kind of believe that this is something that is not going to help on the movie's reputation. To be fair, it doesn't. It's not, like I said. It doesn't go on the nose or kind of like giving you an accusatory finger out of it. But because it doesn't technically, it's not preachy. This is a good thing that at least make this movie more forgiving on this one. This one actually has the advantage that that sticks to a little bit of the metaphors that it tries to do, and it feels more like a character study. It is mostly a character that went through some horrible experience with this really abrasive guy. Abrasive maybe is the wrong word. Very abusive. Not exactly to the. It doesn't go exactly, going too far, I'll say, but you can tell that it's subtly abusive with this. With that, our protagonist went through her husband and unfortunately our protagonist is not exactly kind of like this, the usual strong-willed woman that is gonna fight everyone, all these things. No, this character comes off more weak-willed, and when she was kind of trying her best, trying to find some help out of it, then it comes up kind of like in a fight. But unfortunately, you can notice that this woman has a little bit of a Stockholm syndrome in it, until something begins to, until she begins to finally fight back. But then the husband became so desperate and a little bit stupid, I'll say. So stupid that he went. There were all these fights happening in an apartment in a few floors, and the guy just runs to the other room upstairs, and he bothers the neighbors, and he just has the bright idea to just enter the balcony of his own apartment, but he just slips and goes, and he gets pierced by a fence, and his broken leg and all these things, which honestly, like I said, the slow motion of him falling, for some reason, it gave me a little bit of an unintentional laughter. I don't know. It kind of looks silly on this one. But of course, this leads to our main character kind of having this feeling of guilt because she feels like she's responsible for it. Even the Rory Kinnears character in his priest costume, he's like, well, maybe it is your fault. And she's like, no, fuck you. But I kind of like that one. It doesn't base, and considering that the main character then sees other incarnation of some of the basic instincts of man during, how can I say, during her encounter with the Rory Kinnears clones, like for example, the kind of like the nice, happy-go-lucky caretaker. Then there is kind of like the nasty kid who called her "fuck you, stupid bitch," or the priest who has ulterior motives, or the cop who is a little bit incompetent on his job, saying that he basically, he arrested the kind of like the naked guy. He just let him go, and of course, not to forget the stalker. These are kind of like images that come from her head, and if I want to play a little bit snobbish, this is mostly her character that she's kind of seeing and trying to cope up with her distrust on men, considering her experience with her husband. There is some other symbolisms that they wanted to make, like for example, she sees there's kind of like this I don't know what culture there is, kind of like this folkloric culture with some statues that kind of shows the nature of man and woman, because nature is play metaphorically, I'll say. Say, but I kind of didn't get it, because then I will say that it kind of plays out something at the end, which I think I'm kind of close to get through it, because here's the thing that this is where the movie actually falls apart. You know what? I think I'll go with it right now. Maybe some other things I might remember, but here goes. The final 20 or 25 minutes of the movie, this is where everything falls apart, at least in the narrative, because the movie actually did a nice job on, putting all the, the images, the elements of the storytelling that it goes through with it without being, too in your face. But what I want to mention that while metaphors are kind of, it kind of makes things look more beautiful and subtle in both in the narrative and the imagery, there comes a problem when you become overly metaphorical. The problem is that the movie then becomes so metaphorical that it loses track on the narrative and where it's gonna go, and unfortunately it makes the regular audience get lost in translation. You should I recommend usually saying that you should try to not make a narrative that is just for an intelligent audience, with no offense, just in case, because they're not exactly your only audience. It's like I always said when in animation that never make your animation just for kids, because adults also watch animation. In this case, you make a movie that it feels so intelligent that it makes people who are not exactly into it, they get lost and they will feel like cheated in the narrative, or they feel lost. And that's what happened in it, because it becomes having so much imagery just for the sake of imagery. Even though they give us some, the usual, apart from, I even forgot to mention that they did wanted to make some kind of Adam and Eve reference with, the apples and all these things, but it just comes out, just for the sake of imagery. And of course, there's kind of like the cheap, it kind of makes you confused, thinking that, is there something paranormal, or all these things that are the events that are happening, it is on her head? It's gonna take a while, to put the pieces together, but still, on the get-go, you're gonna feel a little bit lost in the imagery, and this is where the body horror happens, and then comes up at the end. And the ending, something happens that it involves, there is a red herring of an item, I'll say. But then it happens, it feels like things are calmed down, and then the ending. And that was like, huh? There is a little bit of there is a little moment that the movie technically advanced a little bit more, but it leaves you question what happened, what it resolved, what was all about, what was happening with those experiences, what did it gain? Made me feel confused, and it felt like the whole thing was technically all for nothing, and there was kind of like not exactly kind of like a clear resolution. Maybe it could be a resolution for the people who get it, but some of the audience was technically confused about what happened. Even even some guys who were watching the movie and they were in front of me, one of them was so confused, and the other one had to say it was like it was all metaphorical. It was all metaphorical. What? But the guy was like, yeah, but this guy giving birth kind of like 5 times. It was all metaphorical. Just because it's metaphorical doesn't mean that that's an excuse for something excellent or good. So, yeah, okay, the imagery, it may be a spectacle, but still in the narrative, it just collapsed in itself. No wonder, and now that I remember, this is probably the reason why I dislike Annihilation. Because just like Annihilation, the narrative just collapsed, and you were like, I don't get it. So that's my review of Men. It's hard for me to recommend it. Although I'd recommend it better than, well, the Black Christmas thing. If you wanna get something that kind of begins to say that men are evil or something like that. Although again, this one luckily doesn't go that far. It just kind of like this character study. I already warned you about some of the imagery. There is, although it is a spectacle that you could watch. It's not as good as Ex Machina, but I gotta give it credit that I like this one a little bit better than Annihilation, I'll say. So I can't say if I recommend you. I'll just honestly say that you better judge it for yourself. But trust me that as a man, I'm saying that not every man are like that. I don't want them to get too political, gendery bias or something like that. But the movie kind of asked me for it if you want to go into that. So I do recommend it. If you get it, fine. If you don't get it, fine. It's yours. But in the meantime, this as long as this movie is called Men, that's 2.5 Men jingles is gonna be stuck on my head. Men, 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 men.